So this is a question that comes from a man named Bill. It's a heartfelt question, and it's not a very easy question for me to answer. I'm going to start by reading it out to you. He says, Mr. Aurini, I'm a 30-year-old beta male and slowly digesting the red pill, watching your videos and reading red pill literature, as well as right-wing political literature. I know what I'm internalizing is the truth, but I have a few issues that maybe you could clarify. I am gay. I have never been with a woman nor had any relationship with a man other than casual sex. Grew up in a Protestant home, but later converted to the Catholic Church at 19 and left the church at 21. From the age of 18 to now, I would say I'm just wandering through life with no direction, but slowly changing thanks to the red pill. The issue I have is this. Can a man be both and openly a practicing homosexual and a right-wing red pillar? Can a man who is an openly practicing homosexual be a man of faith and virtue? And in order to be a follower of the red pill and right-wing philosophy, does a man need to be a Catholic? I understand if these questions seem complex, but I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts. Well, and thank you for the question. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to it, but it's been on my mind the entire time. Then I need to clarify something right at the beginning of this. I can't tell you what to do. All right? I can't tell anybody how to live their lives or what choices they should make. But what I can do is tell you the options as I see them. I can tell you what I see out there for you. And then it's up to you to make the decision for yourself. So let's start by asking what it means to be a homosexual. What is the life you are choosing there? Well, I think that we can all agree on the fact that homosexuals in today's culture, maybe it was different in ancient Greece or Sparta. But in today's culture, to be a homosexual is to be the ultimate hedonist. I mean, first of all, you've got all the sex and drugs that you can want at the drop of a hat. You've got Grindr, you've got clubs, you name it. There's nothing holding you back. You've got access to the gay mafia. So the gay mafia, it's a phenomenon that crops up in most places where you have a lot of homosexuals. You have all these guys who will do favors for you, a bit of quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. You've got that underground network that will make it easier for you to get ahead, easier to get promotions, you name it. You've got the automatic support of organizations out there. All right, you've got these GLBT movements that will look out for you. You're a protected class, protected minority class. You have a lot of benefits to being a homosexual. And on top of that, you don't have to worry about paying for children. So all of your money gets to go to paying for your lifestyle. You can live very cheap as a homosexual, as well as getting promoted through the gay mafia, and you can have all your needs met. That's certainly one way to enjoy the decline. It's a very effective way to have a lot of fun. Though it's not without its downsides, is it? I mean, first and most obviously, there's the extremely high rate of disease amongst homosexuals. And not just venereal diseases, by the way. When you have a group of men that will stay up all late partying and there's plenty of bodily contact, it's not just STDs that you have to worry about. It's not just bug chasers you have to worry about. It's also new forms of the flu, new anything. That's where it's going to breed. That's where it's going to become its most effective. Then there's the high rates of mental illness amongst homosexuals. And while you might not be mentally ill yourself, you are going to be surrounding yourself with other mentally ill people, which is its own sort of a curse. There's the shortened life expectancy, and this is pretty consistent. It might be a fun lifestyle, but it takes its toll on you very rapidly, and very few homosexuals age gracefully. And finally, you have no meaningful participation in society. Homosexuality is a young man's game. As men, we like youth, whether heterosexual or homosexual. And when you start to get older, your options begin to vanish. You don't build a legacy through being a hedonist. You don't build intimate networks. You have the loose networks, but you don't build the meaningful, intimate networks. Well, as the saying goes, a rolling stone gathers no moss. But this actually kind of leads into the next point. To say that homosexuals, they have so little participation in wider society, leads us to the question, what is civilization? What is society? And at the simplest level, the simplest level of what it means to have a society, it's a group of men who band together to enforce property rights and sexual rights, which, when you get right down to it, is just another form of property rights. My woman, no touchies. Now, of course, it should be acknowledged that a civilization has a parallel female matriarchy going on at the same time as the patriarchy. Okay, the women are very active in their own roles at the same time as the men are active in their roles. And the women, just as much as the men, want property rights respected, and they want sexual rights respected. The men want to know that if they invest in a woman, she's not going to run off on them. And the women want to know that if they get pregnant, the guy's not going to run off on them either. Sexual rights and property rights. Any organization, any group that can get together and start enforcing those things consistently, that is a civilization right there. So when we think about that, when we think about civilization as that enforcement of property norms, of organization, of hierarchy, what does homosexuality do to this? Well, first of all, let's look back at the homosexual mafia. The gay mafia undermines hierarchy. It undermines organizations. See, when a bunch of men form an organization, they do it because they have a united goal and they want to work as a team to achieve that goal that will benefit all their members. When some of the members in that organization are forming a homosexual mafia, that completely undermines the purpose of the organization. Because the gay mafia is not there to help improve the organization. The gay mafia is there to help improve the lives of the homosexuals within that organization at the expense of that organization. Next, for men to form effective organizations, for them to create a Männerbund, male bonding is absolutely crucial. And homosexuality undermines that. The widespread acceptance of homosexuality in today's world has forced guys into the position where they have to constantly affirm not gay, where they're afraid of touching one another, they're afraid of bonding, they're afraid of being mistaken for gay. Because when you have a group of heterosexual men, they know what a pat on the shoulder means. When you have a mixed group of homosexual and heterosexual men, well, suddenly everything is thrown into chaos at this point. You can't tell whether that's a friendly gesture or a sexual advance. So the presence of homosexuals within the Männerbund very much undermines the Männerbund. Next, homosexuality. It makes you a burden on society, not a contributing member, ultimately. Because homosexuality is so brutal on the body, and the only fruits that it bears are the economic productivity, the consumerism that comes out of it. Well, that's not really benefiting civilization. That's benefiting the consumerist system that has destroyed civilization at this point. But it's not helping civilization. You are turning yourself into a burden on society by engaging in all of that. And finally, it puts you at odds with your fellow man. Now, I don't mean that it makes you into his enemy, per se. But it puts you at cross purposes. One of the ways guys bond, well, one of the ways both sexes bond, is by having conversations about how to ensnare the member of the opposite sex that they're interested in. You know, guys want to sit around talking about, little Mary Jane Rottencrotch. They can't have that sort of conversation with you as a homosexual. For one thing, it's a completely different market. For another thing, they don't want to hear what you're up to. It also means that you have different goals, different ambitions than the rest of these men. Again, for a man to acquire a woman, he has to show masculine virtue. He has to show that he's strong, confident, able to defend her, able to provide for her, all of that. As a homosexual, you have a completely different set of goals, ambitions, and interests. So how can you work with your fellow man? Perhaps you would want to take a middling route on it. Not be completely flagrant, completely hedonistic with the lifestyle. But I would say, at that point, what's the point of being a halfway hedonist? Right? Because you're still exposing yourself to all of those risks, those very, very heightened risks. You are alienating yourself from society. And you're not even doing it well because you're not being a proper hedonist at that point. Like, if you're going to be a hedonist, you're going to pay for it, so you might as well enjoy it all out. If you're going to eat cake, it's not good for you. You might as well have a big slice. You ask what it does to you spiritually. And listen, that's a lot harder to say. All right? You know what the rules of the Catholic Church are. These are frequently the rules of most religions because it winds up becoming a hedonistic, a physically oriented, a short-term oriented. There's no long-term plan with it. It's always oriented on the now. For that reason, it tends to be, well, certainly not spiritually beneficial. Which, I know, buddy, this leaves you at a hell of a crossroads. I want to rewind a bit, and that comment you made at the beginning, where you described yourself as a beta male. Why are you using that sort of language about yourself? All right. My colleague Matt Forney, a couple of years ago, he was speaking quite a bit about negative self-talk. And yeah, this is a little bit of a hippie thing, the negative self-talk. But what you'll find is most people, they have a very negative narrative inside their head. They're always criticizing themselves. They're always beating themselves up. And for your average person, if you spoke to others the way you spoke to yourself, people would hate you. So why aren't you treating yourself with the sort of dignity that you give to perfect strangers? So right there, you're not saying, I have beta tendencies, or I was raised to be a beta male, or I've acted beta sometimes, you know? It's the mantra of the manosphere is kill the inner beta. You're affirming that you're beta. So it's not a behavior, it's an identity you're putting upon yourself. If it's an identity, you can't correct it. If it's a behavior, you can. And you know, another thing you might be thinking as well is, you know, can you recover? At what point, if you're not practicing homosexuality, do you stop being a homosexual? Well, can I be frank, bud? We have got such an incredibly damaged generation of young men these days. They're so incredibly damaged. Not a single one of us made it out without a lot of scars, a lot of failures, a lot of times that we were weak because we never had the father figures we needed to show us how to be men. So yeah, it's not great, honestly. It does damage your masculinity. But is it irrevocable? Well, I'd say that's up to you. Everybody's damaged goods these days. So I guess my question for you, what sort of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to leave a legacy? And that legacy doesn't necessarily have to be a wife and kids. There is a lot that people can do. And, you know, same-sex attraction, that's a difficult thing to deal with. You know, you've got my sympathies there. But I guess your question is, you need to look at your life. And you mentioned that you've never had a boyfriend, you've just had, you know, casual partners. Well, like I said, it's very good for hedonism. It's not good for building a legacy. It's not good for participating in society. And you really need to make the decision. Do you want to be a hedonist? I mean, it's not a very nice destination where that ends up, but it is a fun ride. Or do you want to start investing in civilization? Do you want to start being part of something larger than just yourself, something that might just stand the test of time? And that's your decision to make, brother. God bless you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the support. And thank you for the patience, given how long it took me to get to it. Go with God, brother. Deus Vult. Aurini out.